everybody, I'm Nicole Vulcan. I'm the editor of Source Weekly, and why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you're running for?
Okay, thanks, Nicole. I'm Phil Henderson. I'm a current Deschutes County Commissioner, and I'm running for the same position, number 2, again this year.
Why are you running, Phil?
Well, it really started a few years ago when I ran the first time. There were some things I wanted to accomplish, and I've been there now 4 years, so I feel like I have accomplished some of those things, but I'm able to accomplish some more if I stay in there and keep doing what I'm doing.
Okay. So this is a position that puts you in contact with a lot of different people from a lot of different points of view. Can you give an example of a time you worked with someone with a different ideology than your own, and how you came up with a policy solution that worked for all parties involved?
Okay. Well, in some ways, the commission is probably the least partisan of any of the, and least ideological, it seems like, of the different government levels, like legislature. Even the city council seems more ideological than we are. But we often are working with people to get to a certain end, and there may be different ways we get there. So I'll give you an example of one that's been in the press a lot. Is we just started a new Stabilization Center with our mental health, and the idea is that it's a place to try to divert people that are otherwise going to the emergency room or the jail, going to somewhere where if they're in some kind of mental health crisis, they can kind of stabilize their situation. Well, when it came out, and I agree with the policy, I think it's a great idea, but there were some disagreements about how fast we should get there and how much we should spend and the approach. And so one of the things that I did that was some people complained about but I thought it was exactly what I was supposed to be doing, was I said, well, before I go forward to this, I want to go see some. So I went to the 6 different counties in Oregon that have stabilization centers, visited them all. Mm-hmm. Commissioner Dare went to 5 of those, and by going there, we got a better idea what we're getting into, and there were a lot of issues about how much we should do, how we should do it, and we added things by bringing back those ideas. And that, it was mostly a matter of discussions back and forth between us and the staff. The staff had already gotten this idea before I was elected, and they were working on it, but they never got the thing put together. And during the time I've been there, we have got it put together. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of working with them. It wasn't always agreed but in the end, I think everybody's really happy how we've done it. So.
Okay. So obviously, we were going to touch on one of the questions involved the Stabilization Center.
Oh, okay.
And really, the nature of our question is, what's your take on the status of it and the possibility of opening it up to more hours?
Well, so it's already planned to open it up to more hours by October. It should be full 24/7. The original plan was to get it open, and then, which is the weekdays from morning till like 9 o'clock at night. And then we've extended it, the 1st of September, we're going to extend it to all weekend. So it'll be day period, from morning till night during the weekend. And then we've gotten funding from a grant to have it 24/7. Mm-hmm. Now, personally, I think that was exactly the right way to do it, because you're kind of getting the bugs out of it, so to speak, by starting something, seeing what challenges you have, what issues might come up. The other thing is some of the other stabilization centers around the state don't work on the weekends or don't work at night. The biggest times are during the weekdays or the weekend days, but a couple do. Eugene or Salem, well, Lane and Marion counties do, but there isn't as much use, call for it. So we'll see how it works, but the plan is to do it. It always has been that. We were waiting. We'd applied for a large grant, which we were successful in getting. So,
what's your take on the success of it thus far?
Well, we've got the numbers. I think we've had. I didn't bring them with me. I think it's been open a little less than 3 months, and we've had, I think, 300 individual visits. I think in that time, with about 2/3 of them being non-duplicate people. And we're using the respite part is we have chairs in the back where people could just kind of do respite, and those have been used. We've had one of the big questions is how much law enforcement involvement we can get, and that's going pretty well. So I'm optimistic about it. It's a need both for young people and adults of all different kind of persuasions, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So right now, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. We're taking different precautions this year for our endorsement process, meeting in locations of your choice. What's your perspective overall of the county's handling of the COVID crisis?
Well, so the county formally that I'm part of is the health authority for the county. So we have a lot of involvement in the medical parts of it, all of the testing, the tracing, the supplying of masks and all personal protection equipment. We do all the kind of updating of information, that sort of thing. And I think the county itself, the health department's done really a terrific job. We have some great people. I think we have it, with in terms of their knowledge about pandemics or these kinds of situations, but that have worked in it in other places in the world. And then we have people that are real professional doing things like the tracing. So we've kept down. We're pretty low among counties in Oregon in terms of the amount of positive tests, and the number of hospitalizations is pretty low. I think we're still probably below 50 of residents of Deschutes County. I think that our health department's done well. I think the people of the county have done pretty well. I mean, it seems like a lot of people have tried to follow the rules and the guidelines have been put out. People are restless about it. A lot of people have sacrificed a lot with their businesses, but doing that. But I think that's been pretty good as well, and so I'm pretty happy with those things.
So part of what is going to result from this is some strains on budgets. It's going to already creating an economic impact. So what in the coming year with the fallout of that COVID economy, what's going to be your approach to the county budget?
Well, so we did our budgeting for this fiscal year, which goes from July through June, in May. And in May, we were really concerned about several items. One was the transient room taxes, the room taxes that for visitors. That provides a lot of our expenses. It contributes to the sheriff's department. It contributes to some of our other main functions like the fair and expo and tourism. We thought that was going to be down significantly. It was for a couple months, but it looks like that's ended. And so I don't think we're as worried as we were a couple months ago, because people seem to want to come here to travel. Gas taxes, we had the same concern, but as you've seen around Bend, I think there's more people driving now than there was 6 months ago, and there's lots of out of state plates. So those two are looking better, which gas taxes provide a lot of our road maintenance and construction things. We have had some serious decreases with the fairgrounds and expo center. We basically have been out of business since March. We're having to fund that with some of the general fund for a year and with transit room taxes that are carried over. But property taxes here, the other thing we were worried about was property taxes could go down. I've been here through several downturns in the economy and then the last big recession, and a lot of times construction will fall off. It doesn't seem to be doing that either, because again, people want to live here. So our cutbacks mostly we're planning for kind of the worst in those areas. Okay.
Well, meanwhile, there's a discussion nationwide about the buzzword is defund the police, but really what we're talking about is a reallocation of funds toward sorry, I'm losing my place, public and behavioral health and mental health resources. What's your take on that topic?
So both things of what you said are really true. And I think our sheriff's office, which is the county office, we're not we work with the police department on things like 911 radio and things, but the sheriff's office is really the county where we have some oversight and budget and things. And I think the sheriff is already leading on that, in that direction. He is very supportive of the Stabilization Center, which is basically 100 yards from the sheriff's office. So it's really close for the sheriff's deputies to bring them, and that's been good. He also, we already have a lot of physical primary health people, nurses and things in the jail system. Now we're also adding some mental health specialists, 3 of those. So on that side, I think he's moving in the right direction. I think a lot of times they focus on informational law enforcement and what he calls education. That's what he says, we're going to just do education now. So I think that's good. The other side of it for us is our mental health department, which while I've been there, we've had success getting really a tremendous variety and actually quantity of grants that have allowed us to do what's called the community certified community health clinics, behavioral health clinics. That's added people. We've gotten grants to do more what are called wraparound services for kids and families. So one of the things my opponent has said, well, we cut the funding last year. Well, we didn't put as much in from the general fund because we had so much money from other things that our overall funding was not cut. And so that's kind of a misnomer. We've actually increased it. And I'm supportive of that as long as we can continue to get the grants. And we have some really top people in the department. So.
Great, thanks.
Does that answer most of your questions?
Definitely. Another piece of funding that I'm thinking about, we just saw the numbers for, I believe it was June and July in marijuana sales in Deschutes County.
Yeah.
$1 million more
It's
than
booming.
last year
Yeah.
at this time.
Yeah.
That's one thing that obviously will contribute to your budget, but that just gets me thinking about some of the commission's activity around land use and granting or not granting marijuana farms. What's your perspective on that conflict over marijuana and land use in Deschutes County?
So when I ran in 2016, my main point was that I thought the voters in the county should have the right to vote on whether or not they wanted marijuana growing and processing in the county. Because I know that the city of people have been, that's fine with, but maybe the people in the county didn't want it. We didn't have that. So by the time I took office, what my job really was, the prior commissioners had already adopted the regulations. They'd allowed marijuana growing and processing in the county, and then they'd set up the regulations for that. So my job has been really basically interpreting it, the regulations. I've been pretty firm on what I've tried to do with the reading of the regulations, and I think I'm doing that in response to the fact that not everybody that lives in rural Deschutes County wants a marijuana business next door, and so these regulations kind of set up some ground rules. That said, I think we approved nearly 50 of those marijuana grows, and then things kind of got stopped by the OLCC, and they weren't allowing any more permits or whatever. My view now is that it's in the city of Bend. You can see it's clearly a boom industry. It seems like it's a mature business. I was telling somebody earlier today. You can just tell it by all of the stores have new signs, new paint jobs. They have a lot of, it's not a surprise to me they're up that much. You could see it during the downturn. And so I think now the only thing that's on the ballot is the kind of moratorium in the county regions as to whether or not you want more grows out there. And I have no idea really how that'll turn out. It was something we decided to do. We didn't really make anybody happy with the way we did regulations. I mean, we tried everything, we tried to, and so I guess that was our effort to say, well, let's let the voters have their say. Once that's done, that may change something. But I respect what the voters' will is. So.
I guess I'm also wondering about the recent ruling by the State Land Use Board of Appeals, shut down 2 of those definitions of youth activity center. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, you know what it is. So for anybody that watches this doesn't know,
let's get caught up.
There's a regulation that if you're going to have a marijuana grow in the county, it has to be 1,000 feet from a school, 1,000 feet from a daycare or child care center, and 1,000 feet from a youth activity center. Well, when they did the ordinance, they didn't ever define what that was. And so we had two cases where next door to the grows, where one was a kind of a farm that was used for riding classes, and a lot of kids were there. And the other one was out by Sundance Village. It had basically a swimming pool right next to it with, you know, kind of all sorts of youth activities. And so under the rules, we had said that prohibited these being within 1,000 feet. Now, both of these had property they could go to that were more than 1,000 feet. But so then the LUBA said, well, yes, you have a right to regulate it, but we don't like that you've used that rule. So now we're deciding whether we're going to appeal it or not. It really is and this is before I was a commissioner, it was a poorly written rule by our legal in terms of getting it. It should have been maybe more defined, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Being county commissioner, I guess, unlike being a city councilor, is a full-time job and draws a full-time salary. Do you own or operate any other business that would detract from that commitment?
Not currently, no.
Okay.
I had kept my contractor's license for about a year, till last year sometime, but I really hadn't been doing any business because it's really almost impossible to do. The county commission business is, you know, our breadth of issues is so wide, and the things we're involved in every day. So yeah, I don't.
Okay. How can the county commission support the development of more affordable housing in Deschutes County?
So I've had several ideas. Some of them we've been able to do already, and that's one of the things that brings me back to want to run for a second term, because I've been a home builder and in home building for most of my adult life, one way or another. And I feel like one area is what we do, where we just have land as a county that we've been able to basically donate to projects. So we've done that in La Pine to Habitat for Humanity, and for the Housing Works, and we also donated 40 acres east of Redmond to a pilot project that the legislature created that can be used for affordable housing. It's outside the UGB, so that's one of the easier things to do. Other things we're looking at is the issue of our land use system. You know, Oregon's land use system is probably one of the most restrictive in the country. And I'm a lifelong Oregonian, so I've been here the whole time. I graduated high school and they passed this land use system, so I've seen the whole thing develop. And the way it's set up is that we basically try to put all growth inside an urban growth boundary, but that's not really how Deschutes County was built. There's lots of rural housing. There's thousands of subdivisions and plots and things. And so we've looked at the issue, and it hasn't been developed yet, of whether we could do a non-prime resource land. Because what's really different from here than the Willamette Valley is there's lots of places we don't have any soil. So it isn't really farmable, and there's no forest there because, you know, half the county doesn't really have forest. And so could we do any kind of housing projects in any of those areas that would be acceptable to people? And my view is that we need to get less expensive land one way or another, because with the cost of land inside these boundaries, it's like living on an island. There's only so much land, so the prices all shoot up. Well, then the builders tend to build more expensive houses. And what we need for single-family housing is more small houses. And so how do we incentivize that? So one is looking at the land use system, or other ways we do it. The second is, I don't know if you've seen the concept that Core Land Trust is doing, that they have a couple projects here that are really what may be the best model, where a land trust buys land and then people own the houses, so that the costs can go way down. They're very affordable to people, and yet they can build equity.
Mm-hmm.
And then other things I'm looking at is why don't we have any more manufactured homes in our communities? Obviously, we're already doing things to densify Bend and with the new zoning there. So, and that's really outside the counties where, that's not really our area.
Mm-hmm.
That's their land use. But things we could do like that would be good.
That has me thinking about just the recent activity with LUBA. How do you see the county being able to advocate for changing the state land use laws, for example, without incurring a huge cost to the county itself?
Well, I think in some ways it's going to cost somebody something because we're really trying to change something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I'm talking about really isn't something that's just limited to Deschutes County. There's coastal counties that have land that really isn't forest, but it's called that, or most small communities have somewhere they could grow possibly. Most of what I'm saying doesn't really pertain to the metro area. I don't really know what you do in those three counties because they're so big. And
right.
I'm talking about smaller communities. We've got a proposal to change 6 parcels of land in Deschutes County that are already housing kind of developments. We call them legacy housing areas. They were called farmland or forest land, but when our system went into place, they were already in housing.
Mm-hmm.
So one is way up Skyliners the road. One is Hainer Park, which is almost a wiki up. Another one's is a section 36, almost to the border of Klamath County. They're real remote areas that most of them have more than half of the lots are already developed with houses.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a kind of example. Well, why couldn't that whole thing be a zoned housing community rather than calling it something it isn't? So
do you see like a legislative kind
of?
Yeah,
so that one we were going to do as a approval that would be probably challenged to LUBA. So the people, that's what I was getting to, I guess I forgot, was, so we have decided we're going to go ahead with that, but we've been told by Thousand Friends of Oregon and LCDC that they don't want that. So that would mean going to the legislature. And do we build some kind of a base in Oregon that goes to the legislature and says we need to do something. If you're serious about housing, you have to get the cost down. I mean, just 20 years ago, you could buy a home in Northeast Bend for $120,000. Mm-hmm. Now they don't even build anything under 300 something, basically. And I think what I like to say is people care about housing, but they care a lot about other things more, is kind of what happens. All the other things they care about takes priority over housing. And I think we have to make housing number one if we're going to create housing for a lot of working people.
Well, speaking of that, there's been talk in the city this week, and it's been an ongoing conversation about dedicating land for a camp for houseless people.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not talking about the Veterans Village, which is already a county
We're working
effort.
on that, yeah.
What's your take, your position on a county, city, other partnerships to make something like that happen?
Well, I think realistically, we almost have to do something like that if we're going to provide a place where people live. Because now what people are just doing is just filling in around everywhere. I mean, they're on 2nd Street, they're on 1st Street, they're on Hunnell Road, they're China Hat, they're the Juniper Ridge, etc. And the real problem is that people have realized that there's that they can live in a motorhome on a street, whereas they can't live in a motorhome in a camp or something where they can, because there aren't any. We don't build anymore. Kind of like we don't build any more manufactured homes. So it seems like people are going to keep doing that. And I haven't really met with the city about it, but I've been here 31 years. But I'm old enough that this whole phenomenon of homelessness is new in our lifetimes, basically. Mm-hmm. This was not, we didn't see this when we were young really like it is, but I don't think it's going away on its own. So if we're going to try to deal with it in a more organized way, we would have to have some land. But that's about as far as I've gotten with the issue.
So if the city came to you and said, hey, we want your buy-in, county commission, let's move forward, would you be in support of that?
I probably would. I mean, some people may think that by doing that you're encouraging it, but and they don't want to do that. But I think we're gonna have to do something unless you want to just keep living like we are. But it's just kind of, I think we still think of this as a temporary problem that someday you're gonna, you know where Hunnell Road is, northern. You go down, there's 20 people and then we've been out to Juniper Ridge because we were looking for access for the service providers, and there's lots of people in all these places. And as you go up to the mountain, and
undoubtedly you got a pandemic that's causing an economic crisis, and that is undoubtedly going to make it. And then housing prices have just skyrocketed in our community again. So you kind of have this storm that it seems like it's only going to get more extreme.
That's where I get back to, well, if we needed something, what would it be? And is really things much less expensive. And that's what we used to have with manufactured homes. You'd have it with RV parks, but you'd have it in, the whole mill district of Bend was full of little, I bought one of them in the 90s for $45,000. I mean, and it sold a couple years ago for $400,000.
Oh my gosh.
So, but it was the same little house, but that's what people did. People are practical. They'll figure out how to live somewhere if they can do it. But we're not providing. There's no land to do that. So I don't know.
So you talked about some of these legacy developments, but then there's now planning for Thornburg Resort is in full swing. With more to follow, it seems. What are your thoughts on those developments and the role of the county to prevent or support them? Maybe that's
and so I worked in construction and worked for a development company that worked in all the resorts. So I'm really familiar with all the resorts in Deschutes County and really in Central Oregon. And with regard to resorts specifically, it's not just starting at Thornburg. It's about 15 years old. I think it's been appealed 30 sometime. So what we deal with now are just specific decisions, like the one we dealt with today or decided on today is just about whether the site plan for a golf course meets the standards of site plans. I don't know when the actual resort will be built and if it's even practical. I don't know that resorts are really a profitable thing to do now with as many as we have in Central Oregon. I mean, that's not really in my bailiwick. I am concerned with water issues. I mean, I was part of the Basin Study Water Committee, and I'm on the collaborative now, and I do wonder about what our water supply will be in the future. It's really hard to tell. I mean, I know they have water rights, and that's contested too, whether they have water rights. But I think they have the ability to have water rights for their resort if they want it. But I know what it takes to do a resort because I watched them all, and then Pronghorn and Brasada and Tethrow, and they can go sideways if things aren't done right. But I don't. So I'm not in a role of deciding whether or not we should be in that business. Right. That was decided when they zoned all that resort land. Is really when that stuff got decided 20 years ago. So we're really just doing incremental decision making, and we'll see if it goes further.
Another jump off to another topic.
Yeah.
You mentioned the county fair earlier.
Yeah.
What, if anything, would you change about the management of the county fair, considering that now it's been out of business for 6 months?
So what we're interested in doing is, or I am as a commissioner, and we're the oversight body for the Fair and Expo Center, but they also have a county fair and expo board. And then there's the Rodeo and Fair Association, which actually plans the fair. We're interested in having a tremendous fair every year because it's one of the things that is the most county about being a county commissioner. And so we didn't get to do that this year. They did have an auction, virtual auction. And then we're in the event business. So we have all sorts of events typically that can make money. I don't know that we need to change leadership yet. We hired a new director last June. And we're kind of seeing how that works out. I've been frustrated that we haven't solved the egress problem at the end of the fair. It's one of my pet peeves that you're stuck there for an hour trying to get out of the parking lot. And I think we lose a lot of money on that, and I think whoever's there needs to solve that problem. There was a proposal to maybe expand into a new direction, but one of the ideas that was thought about was going in the conference business, expanding the sisters buildings, but being in the conference business is another business, and you better know what you're getting into to know if you can make money doing it. And so that's kind of on hold now. But kind of tightening this purse strings this year, we're just kind of having to ride out this year for probably a 12-month period, and use other funds to kind of backstop it. But we have a tremendous facility, and we are doing some things to remodel and upgrade. I think that's a priority I have, is modernizing it some and making it all look sharp.
Okay.
Facilities.
Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, a couple things that I'm really proud of that I've done, and this was on my goals when I went into office 4 years ago, was I've always had kind of a problem with how property taxes just go up every year, regardless of how the economy goes or anything else. And so I pushed to reduce the increase by reducing the rates. And I was successful with that twice in the 4 years. So we've cut 6 cents out of our base, which is probably really unique in Oregon for any government agency. And our general fund continues to grow anyway. But it does save money in people's pocket, and it puts money in the private sector. And I think that's one of my goals in general, is to make government as least expensive as possible, so that I look at life kind of as, are you going to have enough when you get to retirement to actually enjoy retirement? And so keeping that in private sector hands is important to me. And so I'm proud of that. And I've also been able to do that with my building background, in terms of when we build projects. I've thought about costs of building a lot, and hundreds of homes and big projects, and so I have some ideas usually on that about what we can do to save some money. That's something I'm proud of that I'd like people to know.
So that reduction, and then the ability to keep the level of service, are you saying you achieve that just by finding the places to shave projects? Or?
The fact is that it grows faster than the cost of government, really. With the property taxes, are just unique. It'd be like if your income taxes went up 1% every year. They go up 3 cents, which is the equivalent of about $250,000 per cent, or 4 cents they go up each year, 3%. So over 20 years, you're paying 60% more on the same house that was valued back here. As long as your value is going up, your taxes go up, and for people that have their house for a long time, if they're on fixed income, they aren't making 3% every year more necessarily. That's what we've done. So we've cut the rate, so it's 6 cents less than our full rate, and I'd like to do it again because we're able to, by keeping other budget things in check and being conservative with that.
So last question for you. What differentiates you from your opponent? Why should voters vote for you?
Well, I think the main thing really is that we have different levels of experience. I've done all of these kind of things in the business sector, and I practiced law for 14 years. I have a tremendous amount of experience that I bring to my job. Now I have 4 more years as a county commissioner, and I think that experience is really valuable to the people of Deschutes County. I think those make it, when I hear what he's talking about now as a candidate, most of the things are things I've already done or am doing, and it's because I've been there and I know kind of what these issues are. I mean, the health department is a good example. It takes you, I tell people, kind of jokingly, but it takes you 3 years just to figure out what all they do, because it's a big department with lots of sub-departments, and so I think that experience is a big difference.
Thanks. Anything else you want to add before we go?
No, I appreciate this, Nicole. Thanks for having me here, and enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for contributing to our democracy, however the result turns out.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.